It's the ROMHACK podcast.
Hello. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the ROMHACK podcast. Today, tomorrow, whenever you're watching this, it's going to be a very special episode because we're actually going to be talking about taking care of yourself. And what better person to interview for this kind of thing but chat themselves? So what today's going to look like is, I guess, me paraphrasing or talking about the subject, what we're kind of
all he needs is
looking at today.
Emeralds to become invincible.
And basically allowing ourselves to kind of explore a little bit. Like I said, I'm not like a therapist. This isn't supposed to be like I'm a counselor or anything, but more just, I guess, shedding light on the aspect of just creating stuff in general that sometimes gets ignored, or sometimes the discourse that doesn't really get talked about, and how, like, I guess, varied it can be. It's not like a one sentence answer. It's not you just get it done in 1 second. It's because of the sort of strenuous nature of the subject. But that's kind of why I wanted to look at the chat and kind of see what kind of questions or things they've experienced and stuff. So first off, I might as well start with, who am I? I'm CousinCatnip. I'm fairly new when it comes to ROM hacking overall. I've always had a huge interest in it when I was younger. I used to really be into speedrun stuff, but I remember always seeing like Mario World hacks, like Brutal Mario and things like that, the really early ones. And I remember, like, I think they didn't work well on emulators or very specific ones. You need a good computer. There was a reason why I didn't like play them back then. And especially when the Kaizo ones got popular, I just assumed like all Mario hacks were like super skill, like you had to be the best player ever to play. But I would always like see them every now and again, or pop up, or like, things like that. And as the years went on, I think Twitch really exposed me to them, like in a bigger way. But I definitely used to watch YouTube videos of like all those really hard hacks, like when Proton John would play stuff, and some of those like really early like ROM hacks, like the really brutal ones where it's like mostly like, I think that's why I was kind of scared away from ROM hacks, because you pretty much always see like a ROM hack to make it harder, never to just make like another Mario game. And the thing is that those existed back then, and those were definitely a thing. But I guess like the more normalization of like all types of hacks definitely didn't come about until, I'd say, probably the last 10 years or so. And seeing different people make hacks on stream, like Barbarous King, and just seeing like the tutorials too that they made and stuff like that, and all these different communities that existed both in like Mario and Mega Man, really encouraged me to want to pursue it. And also just seeing how it was getting less about like reverse engineer code knowledge and more about like, okay, here's a tool and like what can you create with this tool. So I've always been more of like a designer more than like a coder. But the interesting part is that with a lot of modern game design, like the kind of field that I kind of wanted to get into, like as an indie dev and stuff like that, it definitely got interesting because I felt like there was a lot of crossover and ideology and stuff like that, which was the idea. Like I wanted to learn like I kind of start with like some type of framework that like is proven, I guess you could say, or like kind of get feedback on like a no pressure project, because releasing a ROM hack versus like a commercial project is like totally different things, right? So I always find it interesting taking a moment to really examine that, right? But that's a little bit. One day I'll kind of get, I guess, more and more into it. But I guess for ROM hackings, that's kind of generally it. But what are we talking about today? Like such a sad song right now, Final Fantasy. I mean, I guess it's appropriate. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, like even with my own projects, like I'll just start from there to like, break the ice, I guess, so to speak. It's sort of the classic phrase, where like Rome wasn't built in a day. And I think a lot of that is true when it comes to creative projects, and I guess specifically ROM hacks, because that's what our podcast is about. But it's sort of like this moment of if you can kind of push past like a certain like day. It's not like there's any kind of specific day, like, oh, day number 10. But there'll kind of be like this point where you sort of have to like make this decision of like, do I want to keep doing this or not? And I feel like that's like sort of what the passion can be, like that fire, right? That thing that kind of drives you to make the thing you wanted to make in the first place. For me, I've always like seen it as like a fire. You know what I mean? Something that can essentially be like, you know, it can get like stronger or weaker, I guess, so to speak, depending on situational stuff. But not necessarily on whatever, but that's just my own interpretation. But it might be different for you. But essentially, it's kind of like, usually when you're newer, that fire burns really bright because you have that initial like idea to do this, right? You're like, all right, I'm gonna fucking do this. And then as you kind of keep going, usually as you realize like the learning curve and how much you have to learn, you start to kind of take a step back and be like, wait a minute, like maybe I'm not as blah blah blah, like whatever it could be. Like maybe I don't know enough about the NES or SNES or whatever it is. Maybe I don't know enough about music. Maybe I don't know enough about level design. Maybe I don't know enough about all the things, like just everything. And it can be very overwhelming at first. And essentially, I feel like that's where that tipping point is I'm talking about. Because some people will get to that point, that sort of moment of like, okay, I'm like, I have to kind of make a choice here of what I'm going to do. And some people will walk away. They'll be like, all right, I don't like this. And that's usually if they're like, so to speak, like their passion, like for that project isn't really like, you know, like, I don't want to say bigger because I feel like that's not fair. It's more just like it's like weighing the factors of time, like the sunk cost fallacy. Like some kind of idea of like, I could spend a year working on this, but do I want to spend a year working on this? And I don't feel like that means necessarily someone's less passionate, so to speak, but more like they just don't have the inclination to want to finish it, right? And like, I guess that kind of is what passion is, like this desire to want to stick with it regardless of anything. And I mean, that's kind of the topic I want to explore today too. So yeah, so you have the people who walk away from stuff. You have the people who will kind of like buckle down with it and kind of just like go with the flow. You know what I mean? Like they're not necessarily sure of how much longer it'll take, but they're like, all right, I guess I'll just keep going. And then I feel like you have the kind of the really edge cases, like the really odd edge cases here. But the ones who are like, okay, I'm really gonna start pushing it. Like I'm gonna like not just learn it, but I'm gonna learn like every single like facet of it and all that kind of stuff. And what's interesting is all three of them kind of have their own drawbacks, so to speak. And they could be weighted heavier or not, depending on what you feel like is important to you and what the project meant to you. Because I didn't even talk about how projects can mean like, they can be essentially like a self-expression. You know, like when someone writes like a fan fiction, which is basically what a ROMHACK is. That's essentially them expressing themselves, either like using the characters as like props and like expressing their own desires, or you know, using it for like stand-ins and that kind of stuff, or like, you know, it's either seeing themselves in that world or other people or their friends and all that kind of stuff. Or like I said, using them almost like props, where it's like, I want to talk about a story about depression, but I'm gonna use Mario. You know what I mean? As an example. And that's kind of like what The Last of Us and those kind of games did, right? Like this sort of idea of like a desolate story, but like the humans are worse than the monster. Like the zombies and stuff aren't really the focus, so to speak. They're kind of the same idea with this kind of stuff with ROM hacks, where there's definitely ROM hacks that are more about the expression of the person. And sometimes that can tie back to what I just talked about before, where that could be their way of dealing with like the pressure of the project and how they're going to go about doing it and all these kind of things, and like understanding how do I finish something that's so beyond myself, and almost like inserting their own part of themselves into the game. And there's famous examples with Majora's Mask and the developers doing that and talking about how there wasn't enough time. That's why there's so much like time, like we don't have enough time dialogue. So it's essentially the developers like inserting their own like life into the game, you know what I mean? Which is a kind of interesting topic to think about. But yeah, so, and then there's probably more examples too. I said 3 choices, but there could be way more than 3 choices. But I think it's important to think about like that struggle creatively and like I guess when it's okay to let it go. Because sometimes, like I've brought up this example before, but for those that haven't, you know, watched the stream or whatever the hell, there's so many different aspects of what, like I guess a masterpiece or what a perfect game is, or a perfect example of a ROM hack or whatever. And the thing that people often forget is that they often still have flaws. Usually the creator was still unhappy with it, but I don't think I've ever seen a thing where the creator was like actually happy with it. You know what I mean? Where they were like, I actually completed every single idea, nothing was rushed, nothing was compromised, everyone was happy on the team. Like that will literally never happen. So when you have to take that same dynamic that usually is spread upon so many different people and departments, and then trying to do it as one person or like two people, I think people underestimate how hard that can be sometimes and how much pressure that is. And I don't mean that in like oh, respect them more, because you should just respect them anyway. They're giving you literally free entertainment, right? But I do think it's fair to, if you have to be like, yo, this level sucks, I think that's fair too, in my opinion, because I feel like feedback is how we get stronger. And of course, hearing that the level sucks and then it was all about self-expression and about, you know, maybe it was like a metaphor for your dying hamster or something, and you know, they just didn't understand that the level meant that. And I'm using like a somewhat silly example, I guess, but it's true though. You'd be surprised at how real life will often find itself working its way into art. There's many examples of something that seems kind of sort of, I guess, one thing on the outside, but then when you examine it, it's another thing on the inside. I guess Celeste would be a really good example of that. Earthbound, some of these like more, I guess, spiritual type of games, or ones that deal with these ideas of identity. And I'm sure there's tons of other examples. I think there's like a million indie games that could be mentioned here. But even with ROM hacks, even though in some ways they're still kind of like a new genre, as a lot of these tools for a lot of these things, some of the oldest ones are about 20 years old, maybe a bit older now, like 25 years old, without people, you know, just doing direct text editing and stuff like that. So in comparison to video games as a spectrum itself, it's like half the time of video games, not including some offset one, you know, some original examples like Miss Pac-Man and stuff, which were more like definitely were ROM hacks, but was sort of a different pursuit, so to speak. Although I guess it's the same nature. It still was the original idea of like, we want to take this game and make it better, or we want to take this game and do whatever, right? And the whole idea of using it as a canvas for expression, I think sometimes gets not lost, but underrated. Like not everyone's gonna have the skill to make the best thing ever, you know, be that third person who can like devote their entire life to this one subject, this one project, this one thing, right? So I think understanding that other people are going to create things on their own path or on their own violation, I can't remember how to say the word, but of their own way, of their own expression. I think it's worth looking at too. And that doesn't mean to dismiss things like that, where it's like, oh man, like we have to like the hack because it's weird or because it's different. But it's more just like appreciating that this was kind of like what they could do, right? And like I think that sometimes you have to like think about like these people who are really good, it was because they got encouraged from their first projects and they felt them to continue on. And I don't really feel like I see much discouragement in that regard, at least in from my own circles I've seen. I often see people trying to be like, yo, thank you, like please make more. But often I find the pressure of the developer is often greater than of the fans. And I think it's totally fair, because I kind of touched upon it earlier, but I might as well move into like the next topic here of like, video games aren't made by one person typically. Nowadays it's becoming more common because of so much stuff being able to be outsourced or being able to be just connected via the internet. There's so many channels you can like network and find people and do things. So allowing yourself to remember that, I think is fair. I've often seen people get afraid of asking for help. And sometimes that could be because of a few bad apples, so to speak. Like one person said something bad like 10 years ago. Now everyone's afraid to like share or whatever. So this is not any kind of specific example. I was just trying to give like a really vague example for that reason. But you know what I mean? Like, and sometimes it could also just be a matter of people not realizing other people would use that knowledge. But I think that's a whole different discussion. That's kind of getting off track of what I'm trying to get at here. But the point is that even like if you talk about Mario World hacking, like that's not even made by one person anymore, because if you use the resources, that's made by another person. Use a background, a song, a graphics tile, a ASM, whatever. Like you're still collaborating, you're still using other things. And remembering that you don't have to sort of like handle the pressure all by yourself is really important. And I guess also giving yourself time to handle that pressure. Because it's easy to be like, okay, like I'm one person, but okay, I'm gonna try and make, you know, another Mario World, 96 exits. All right. Since you're one person, even if you do one exit a day, that's still 96 days just for the exits. Assuming you're not gonna do any kind of playtesting or any kind of like do-overs, or if you get stumped or you don't have a day to work on it. Because 96 days in a row, that's still like, that's like what, 3 months or whatever? Like that's a shit ton of time. And that, again, that's assuming that every level is like perfect the second you make it, right? Like you have like no issues. So even just, I think that's like keeping in mind of like scale and scope with expectation helps a lot with like relieving that pressure. It's like, okay, if I'm gonna make, if I really want to make the greatest thing ever, like that's gonna come with the expectation of making the greatest thing ever. And sometimes I feel like that gets misbalanced. It's like, I'm new, I'm gonna make my dream hack. All right, let's make like the hardest blah 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 ASM. Man, why is this so hard? It's like, you know, the expectation to time, like I said, even on a good day, like at least 100 days, like assuming like you were the best designer ever. So it's like, why not make an 8 exit hack? Now suddenly this pressure of making like 90 more levels, that's gone, right? And that could be done in like 2 weeks. And like, again, that would still be assuming you're not really doing much polish or like playtesting. Like that's what you'd spend the next time doing. And we'll go up to my next point of, you're not a professional, so you don't have to spend forever. Or sorry, I said that backwards. You're not a professional, so you can spend forever on it. I don't mean that in a disheartening way. Like, you could literally spend 30 years on this hack and every month work on it. And the thing is, it feels like one of those like half glass full, half glass empty things. Because for some people, that's like, oh my god, that sounds terrible. And for other people, that sounds like, oh, okay, I don't actually have to like get it done right this second, so to speak. But I mean, that's what like, I guess, you know, deadlines are for, expectations. Because if I have to work on, let's say I'm only working on it once a week, but if it's only 8 levels, I can still get that done in like 6 months. You know what I mean? With like, yeah, like not even 6 months, like 3 months, 4 months, depending. Again, assuming that, you know, everything's going good, there's no issues. And I think it's important that you do give yourself ample like fuck up time. I think that gets underrated. I think people underestimate how much revision goes on, both professionally and in ROM hacks. Usually what takes so long is not the actual placement of the tiles or the implementation of the ASM or the graphics or whatever, but the actual like, is this fun factor? And that's something that like I said, like people who are paid like salary struggle with. And this concept of, is it fun, is something that you can't necessarily like create on a timeline, even though you kind of have to in a way. But again, with ROM hacking, that's the beauty, is that's what I mean with that sort of freedom. Where if you want to spend 5 months experimenting with like every crazy thing ever, that will ultimately probably make it better, because you'll probably figure out something that no one else is going to figure out, or combination, or whatever the hell, right? That you could implement later into your 8 levels. But obviously, I think it's important to give yourself some type of something. I guess maybe not, though. That's kind of where I want to talk with chat about this. That's what I think in terms of 1 level's worth a day. Definitely limiting scope is one of the most powerful things you can do. In terms of mechanics, have few ones to start off with and then evolve naturally during the course of the project. Yeah. I think that's it's almost like the Nintendo design philosophy. There's lots of YouTube videos about this kind of stuff, where they essentially introduce an idea in like usually in a safe environment so you can fuck around with it. And then as the level goes on, they give you progressively harder versions of that one thing until you eventually beat the level and you're kind of doing the hardest variation of that thing. And as the game goes on, they'll introduce new concepts for that one level. And usually when you get to like a castle, those are kind of like the boss or exams. So you'll essentially see a combination of all the elements. Maybe the boss will require you to do the run-throw thing you learned. Maybe the castle will have you climb stuff and jump stuff, and those are all things you did in the level, like 3 levels before. So even with how you design it, that can help relieve a lot of the stress too. So if you know, okay, I got 8 levels. Level 1's gonna be the, you know, the introduction level. Maybe we'll just have jumping. It's just all about pits and jumping. I jump over pits. Okay, level 2. That's gonna be the climbing level. It's all gonna be all about climbing, all the different fun ways you can climb. Okay, level 3. That's gonna be bullet bills and nothing but, and like the thing is, you don't have to set it in stone. Like, okay, that's it. I've done it forever. Having flexibility, especially with yourself in brainstorming phases, is really important, and I feel like again underrated. Hey, the cars. But I feel like people want to perfect it on the first go, when it's more about not about being perfect, but getting something on the paper. You know what I mean? Like getting words out, or getting the, you know, the level out, or words to the page. And that can be as simple as like you just go, you open up a Word document. I just want to get a thing here. Yeah, you open up a Word document, you're just like, I can see it. Okay, let's see. Level 1. Grassland, you know, like tutorial level jumping stuff. Level 2, like, and again, you don't have to do like this fast. You can like, you could be like level 1. Okay, I'm gonna, but maybe it could be different. Maybe it'll be a castle fire level, like all about, you know, jumping on fireballs and shit. Maybe it's like a meme level, like you fight like a fish or something. Maybe it's, you know what I mean, like just getting ideas out. Sometimes that like helps you with all this kind of stuff, because you're, as opposed to like keeping it all in your head and you're like, how much do I have left? What do I have left? What am I trying to do? And again, you can change your mind. Like maybe you're like, all these level 1 ideas suck, but level 2, I like the fort, Reznor, outside sky level thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, like maybe I'll make that level 1 now. But like, okay, and I still want my tutorial thing, so maybe I'll make that like the house, like the Yoshi house. Oh yeah, the Yoshi house, that'd be a perfect tutorial. Okay, level 2, maybe that's when I should do the meme level. So now I've played the game a bit. And look, now I already have 3 levels already done, right? Like, okay, Castle Fire, that could be like level 4 or something, right? And now, okay, we've played more of the game. And so, okay, you know what I mean? Like, and then you kind of get this momentum in a way. And again, I'm kind of, again, doing just very general ideas. You can get as specific or as broad as you want. I find everyone thinks differently. Sometimes, just putting words to a page can be really helpful. A good example is with The Witness. Some of the funniest moments you've had where the game completely changed up one of the mechanics in an innovative way. The mechanic could have been done all along. We just never thought to do it. And I feel like that's the like being like a good game designer and being like a great game designer. Where Mario games are famous for this, where you essentially had the tools the whole time, but you didn't realize it. Like, you pretty much had everything you needed. You just had to like learn the specific jump combination, or the way the physics worked. Or Bomberman 64 we saw recently, where you can play the game, the entire game, you can play it like basically like Bomberman. Or if you spend the time to learn the expanded move set of jumping off bombs and throwing them and doing all this crazy stuff that's not even required really, except for 100%. And doing that kind of stuff with ROM hacks, I feel like that's sometimes where the pressure comes in again of like, how do I create these innovative new things, and how do I do this stuff? And for example, if you found, okay, I opened up the Word document, I wrote words down, but like I'm still not feeling it, maybe that's the time to bust out the program, right? Like maybe that's when you're like, okay, now it's time to actually like, maybe I'll just like bust it open, right? Okay, I got the program open. Let me get like a blank level. Like, okay, Bowser's Castle, right? All right. We got our boy Mario here. Sometimes it can be as simple as just like, okay, I'm just gonna throw down some tiles. Like, I'm just gonna... It doesn't even have to be like pretty either, so to speak, right off the bat. But sometimes to get yourself out of that rut, you just have to like start somewhere. I know it sounds like kind of silly or whatever, but it's just one of those things where you don't realize that you're like stuck sometimes. And like I said, you can worry about putting it up later, so to speak. Maybe we'll throw down some rope. Maybe we'll do a cool background thing. Yeah, these things are always fun. And like, this is all basic stuff. And like, oh, okay, now I'm inspired. Maybe I'm gonna go to SMW Central. And okay, maybe there's a really cool spike ball thing. And you know what I mean? Like now suddenly, like again, the juices start flowing again, right? Like I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not backing myself into a corner creatively. I'm allowing myself some freedom to breathe here a little bit. Okay, maybe I'll put the stairs here and like... And again, it might not be like, oh, this is my greatest level I've ever made. But there might be an idea that comes from this moment. Like you might be doing this stuff and then you're like, wait a minute, like... Well, it might be cool if I like... Could I have a level that's like all blocks on background and then like... Maybe I get rid of all this stuff. Well, maybe I get rid of all this stuff. And instead, it's just like using this thing. Too much. And then like you're on the background and like, but you know what I mean, like so on and so forth. You like change up the way the level works. And then I think that freedom and actual like desire to explore is what makes this fun. And again, assuming you're using a tool like this that allows you this kind of freedom, not everyone will have the... Not every game is this simple, right, so to speak. Prototyping is very valuable. You have to do everything at once. First make something you can test out and throw away without sunk cost fallacy. Yeah. And the beautiful part is, if you're doing ROM hacking, unless you're doing like a really, really extensive like rewrite or, you know, redo of the game, you should have ample time to be able to edit pretty much anything. You can not edit anything, but sorry, I said that weird. Because you're ROM hacking, the game itself can be prototyped, or like sorry, the game itself has already been like prototyped pretty extensively, unless you're doing again like an extensive rewrite. So like you don't have to do a lot of the like things you would do if you're making like a game from scratch, where like, okay, like how does my physics, collision, all this kind of stuff work? So like I said, most ROM hack creator programs will have things where it's like the collision for these blocks are already determined, right? Like it'll stop Mario from moving. So it becomes more about prototyping, like almost like new ideas within the game itself. Like, oh, like how does the rope work? Like I've never seen the rope like close someone in. Like maybe I'll try to make the rope, you have to jump out, and now maybe it's like a vertical rope thing that like... So, and again, this is more just for like that like creative rut idea, kind of idea that sometimes we all get stuck in. We feel like we are unsure. Can you zoom in? I mean, it's not that important. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Mario Maker 2 troll levels are a good example. Well, I mean, like, those levels are interesting because they're kind of like... They're so bad visually, but then they end up being these like actually really well designed things. Like if we're talking about like the you know like the popular ones where it looks like it's a bad level, but it turns out it's actually like really well done, because it's more like turning the game on its head with regard, like it messes with the game so much that Nintendo like hates those levels, right? But yeah, exactly. I think experimenting within the limitations is really important. But I guess kind of going back to what we were talking about before, I feel like it's also important. I want to get like some advice out in regards to just like creativity. I don't want to just be like, man, people feel sad sometimes about how they do, and that sucks, and then offer like no advice. You know what I mean? But I wanted to give a little bit of stuff there. And the question of when enough is enough, it really is a hard question to answer. And I feel like that's where a lot of I've seen a lot of turmoil come from, where the 1-year project becomes a 5-year project, becomes a 10-year project, because it's like, it's almost like a circle where it's like, oh, I want to make this thing. Well, I gotta learn. Okay, well, I've made a thing. I don't know if I like it. Well, I guess I want to make this thing. Okay, I gotta learn. I gotta make it. I don't know if I like it. Oh, now I've gotten better. Okay, I gotta learn this thing. Oh, now I've gotten better. Make more things. Okay, now I've gotten better. Okay, make more things. Learn more things. Make more things. Learn more things. Make more things. And then, like, your quality standard is like kind of like your bar is like slowly raising. And sometimes we forget to like look back on where we've come from and realize, like, maybe 6 months ago you didn't even know what ASM was, or the term, or how to hex edit, or any of these things. And now suddenly you're like making custom bosses, or you understand how to look up a table or whatever. And I think that gets underrated. Like, people go through entire courses and degrees for this kind of stuff. So discounting your own efforts just because your hack's not as good as the dude who spent 10 years working on it. Not even working on that one hack, but just like working in the ROMHACK field, you know, working on different projects. Projects that maybe this is like their 20th project, 30th project, 50th project. We only ever see what people have finished. You never see the incomplete projects. Maybe you'll see a demo or two, right? But there's probably millions of projects that have been abandoned at this point over the last like 30 years. If you count, you know, any person who's opened Lunar Magic and then quit, and then, you know what I mean, or like made a level for fun and was like, ah, whatever. It's kind of interesting, right? In programming, it's really important to learn how to make things that you can keep working with, even if you learn more. But the thing I would stress too is, like, it's okay to walk away from your first project or your first few projects, because, like, I know this is the thing in programming too, though, right? Where, like, when you first, don't they often say, like, when you first make something, like, just do it again, basically? Like, when you make your first game, just basically quit it and then just make it again. Like, just do it again. But pretty much no one ever does that, because it's kind of like your baby, right? And I made that mistake with my Steam game, What is Sleeping in My Room, because I was like, no, like, I've already spent so long. But honestly, it probably would have been faster if I'd started over, because I had so much baggage that by the end I had to like rework the shit that I was like, what the fuck did I, like, what was I doing back then? Because I had no idea what I was doing. So it's like interesting how, at what point do you think enough is enough? And again, I feel like, I guess that the biggest thing is, like, if it's like, well, I would just do better redoing this from scratch, that might be the point of just doing a new project, right? But also, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, it's only like one more thing. I guess that could almost have the Civilization effect of like, one more turn, one more turn. And you have to end up doing it for like another 7 hours, which is very true as well. But I think, I guess that goes back to your expectations and the thing we talked about, where if it's only 8 levels, I don't really have to worry about it too much, because it's like just one of those things where it's like that. Prototypes are made to throw away. I think that's a great quote. Prototypes are made to be thrown away, or made to be thrown away. But once you started for real, I'd say you shouldn't throw away things completely. But I will say there's nothing wrong with that, though, because I just saw a thing today with the System Shock remake, where they threw it away 3 different times before they got to like the current version, and it's like a really good remake apparently. But it is different. Again, that's a team of people with like millions of dollars and salaries and professional degrees versus one dude in like a thing. But I think you definitely will get to a point, like if you're brand new versus like you've already made a hacker, you know, you've prototyped or you've messed around for a bit. Yeah. That's definitely a huge difference. And I feel like once you're at that, like, you know, that medium level or higher, or, you know, beyond total beginner level, you have some idea of like what you need to kind of do and how long it's going to take. Because when you're first starting out, of course you're gonna have no idea, but you start to kind of learn, right? So I feel like that's when you can make those better estimates of like, okay, maybe I'll just leave this as a 1.5, and then I'm just gonna make like Bubsy Jr. 2, and that's where I'll just do all my, now that I'm better at hacking, I'll just I'll just do it there. And maybe I'll bring over some of the, you know, I made some custom infinite HP thing or something. Maybe I'll bring that over. But except with ROM hacking, the beauty is that there's no contracts, right? Like if you want to abandon it, you totally can. Even if it's like 90% done. And the cool part too is that it's community based. So if someone wants to finish it, they could always finish it too. Although I know that can sometimes be a hot take, but we are already using other people's things, so I feel like everything should be for everyone, but I know not everyone feels like that. I think that you can work yourself to a point where you're stuck. And that's what I mean, where that might be the time to start anew, essentially, right? That's the one thing that's really important to learn. Thinking about, is future me going to be able to work with this? That's a good point. Almost giving yourself a thread, right? That's why sometimes I just work on a new level instead of trying to go back to an old one when I start. Like, I'll just like work on something new and then kind of go back, like once I kind of get warmed up. Because and sometimes taking a break, that is a really underrated thing. But taking a step back and then just going, like, just take a week off. Don't look at it, don't open it, and then come back. So many times you'll come back and be like, oh wow, this is way better than I thought. Or this is way worse than I thought. But you'll finally have your answer. As opposed to just like the same thing, same image, same level, same, like you're just trying to grind it out. Sometimes you just have to kind of like take a step back and then like just play a different game or something, you know, to go outside. Literally touch grass, right? Playing some video games in the mental health facility help with your health. I said that's a whole different discussion, but yes. Video games can be very good for mental health. Usually for, sometimes it can be for about understanding of like people and situations and social aspects and like relationships. But sometimes it can be about just like almost like an escapism in a way, not like in a bad way, but just like it stops you from thinking about like what's bugging you or what your issue is. Sometimes you really got to throw it away, but more than that, it shouldn't be the first thing that comes to mind. That's a good point. That's a good point, man. Block. It shouldn't be like I'm at a roadblock. Oh, throw it away. That's a good point. It should be more like I'm talking more like, okay, I'm on version 7.7 of my hack. Like I can't really add anything else. What should I do? And it's like, okay, that might be the time of like, you probably can't do anything more, right? And that's totally fine. Like I said, Miyamoto walked away from OOT thinking he was going to be able to update it. And we saw how that went. Isn't that, Rob? We are in the middle of a podcast, so we're talking about taking care of yourself. So the idea is that when people make ROM hacks, sometimes they work themselves like beyond the point of exhaustion, or they like burn themselves out on the game, or they like their love of the game goes away. And oftentimes that comes from a repetition of sort of this continuous grind where they feel like they have to keep updating the game forever, but not realizing that there is no actual time limit, and that you can always just like nothing is ever perfect. Nothing is ever done. Like, you know what I mean? No human being is ever perfect. No opinion is perfect. No video game is perfect. Like that you've paid money for. So I think this idea that you as a ROM hacker have to be perfect is already flawed to begin with. And even if you can release a product that's like 90% good, I think it's already a huge testament. And if you have a level that sucks or two and the person tells you, I think that's okay too. Knowing how to fix a thing or hearing consistent feedback. If you release enough projects, like talking for those that have done more projects. Next, we talk a lot about beginner stuff, but for those that have released more stuff, you sometimes notice patterns if you've released a lot of projects or been involved with a lot of projects. It's like, oh, okay, that one level, or, you know, people don't like rush jet levels, or I'm just giving examples. I'm not actual examples, but like, oh, people didn't like that one Kaizo level. Oh, people didn't like that, the water level. Oh, people always hated my water levels. Every hack I've done. I think that's valuable feedback because that can also make you grow creatively, as opposed to it being like, oh man, I really suck at this. It can be like, maybe you have to twist the idea. Like maybe you have to like ace attorney it, so to speak. Like instead of being like, why do I suck at water levels? It can be like, what can I do to make the water level more fun? Or maybe to adhere to my design standards. Like maybe you're really good at like the platforming and like pit stuff. So maybe the water levels like a raised lower kind of thing, as opposed to full out like underwater kind of thing. Or maybe it's like you only go into the water like if it's like Sonic 2, if you suck. Like you're jumping across the top and like, oh, if I suck, I'm gonna fall into the water. So I like in Donkey Kong Country 2 does a lot of that. where like the water isn't, there's not any full water level. It's all kind of combined together with like other kind of stuff. So I think oftentimes what people perceive as to be a negative or a flaw can end up becoming their greatest asset. Because you probably already know the stuff that you did good in. But hearing like, oh, this jump sucks or this thing sucks, even though we have to learn to take the feedback, because I've sucked at this too before, where people have questioned things in my hack and I've been like, no, like it was my artistic interpretation, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that doesn't really mean anything if it's not fun, right? It kind of goes back to, again, to that whole, is it fun concept. And finding that balance is really tough. And I think you shouldn't underrate if someone's gonna give you that idea, but you also shouldn't attach yourself, like your ego, so heavily to the project that if someone gives you feedback, you're gonna get like really upset. Like if someone says your ROM hack sucks, like it's okay to be like, damn, that was mean, you know what I mean? But hopefully they give you like something tangible with it. As most people know, when I try to give feedback, I try to like specifically point out the thing that like I don't like. Like, oh, this level sucks because I can't see. Like this is a blind jump. Like there's no trail. There's no, like the other day with that Mario hack, where like they didn't test that one specific case where like the coins could have led us down to the platform, but like so stuff like that, where sometimes people will let that get them down, where like this person is just trying to help you make a better game. And then there becomes that whole thing of like, well, they gave me the feedback. Do I change the hack right now? And I feel like it's up to you ultimately, but I think that if you knee-jerk to every reaction, you're going to end up having a different issue, which is essentially like almost being a slave to your audience, where it stops being about like this artistic expression or, you know, like you creating these levels, and more about like someone else controlling it. And the thing is like, that works well for a lot of things, like in like fighting games and, you know, things with patches, like community party game stuff. Like I feel like it works well because the whole notion is that you want a fair game. Well, I feel like with more single player experiences, it gets harder to do that with, because if you knee-jerk to everything, everyone has a different skill level, right? So now you're stuck between like, do you cater to the Kaiser people? Do you cater to the people who want more checkpoints? Do you cater to the people? So sometimes it might be easier to not necessarily like knee-jerk to the reaction, but I treat it more like a Roller Coaster Tycoon, where you can like crowd the people together, like their thoughts. So if it's like 50 people at once are like, wow, I think this ride's too dangerous. Like that might be a clue the ride's too dangerous, or like, you know what I mean? Like it's not going to be profitable or whatever. So the same thing with ROM hacks. If it's like one person being like, oh man, that jump sucked, but like 50 other people are like, oh man, that was a sick level. Then you know what I mean? Like you have a better idea, and it's like, oh, okay, you can kind of see how they played the rest of the game. Oh, they're like more of a slow player. They don't play it as fast. And like, and that's again information you can choose to use or not. But sometimes like a level can suck, but it doesn't ruin a hack. And it can just suck because of, like I said, their skill set. They might not be good at doing the wall run, something jump, using an item and hopping off it, or whatever the skill set required. And that again isn't necessarily a reflection on you as a person or anything like that, or you as a creator, but more of a reflection on, you know, the player in a way. And again, whether you want to cater to that or knee-jerk to that, is up to you. But like I said, I say knee-jerk where if it's like a person says and you like instantly do it. And then there's different cases, like if you're collaborating with someone, that's a bit different, right? Where like you hold their opinion in a different level. So I feel like that would, you would probably not knee-jerk, but you'd take their opinion more seriously and like do their changes, versus like random guy on internet who like didn't even finish it, maybe. But again, if you have 100 people, random guys on the internet, and they're all like, man, that one jump, like maybe that'd be a good time to do an update and just maybe change that one jump. You know what I mean? Cause there's a whole other debate too of when does a ROM hack stop being the same ROM hack, and that's a different day's discussion. That's not really about taking care of yourself, but it can in the way, the footnote, because like I said, if you get obsessed with updates, you can't work on a new project. And I think that gets underrated as well. Like that sort of fire and that sort of that passion I talked about, you can definitely reignite it. And sometimes not staring at the same project can do that. And it doesn't even have to be for real. It could just be, I'm gonna make a 1-level throwaway hack, and I'm not even gonna release it. I'm just gonna make it because just to change it up. Like maybe it has different mechanics in your game or whatever it is. And I've done that before. I've worked on like a random bubble hack for a while now. Where like I don't even know if I'll release it. It's just I just kind of do it as like therapy almost. Like I just put some bubbles down and I'm like, ah. But it's one of those things where I guess it comes down to what are you trying to do with the ROM hack? Is it like an artistic expression? Are you trying to be the best hacker ever? Are you like just being realistic with your skill level at this current point? How obsessed will you be about updates? And these are things you can't necessarily decide. Sometimes this stuff just happens naturally. Like maybe the hack gets really popular. So it's like, okay, maybe I'm going to listen more to the feedback. I have a lot of information coming in now that I didn't have before. And again, that brings new pressures and new things. And so I guess having an internal compass or an internal structure, or what do you want to call it? This knowledge of like, okay, I know what I want out of this hack. Like, okay, I know my hack is a standard hard hack. Like, you don't have to be that specific, but like, I know it's going to be a hard hack. I know it's going to be like, you know what I mean? It's not going to be Kaizo, but I know it's going to be like, not for like a beginner player, but for someone who's played the game before. And even just coming with that information in when you get feedback, that can change the perception, right? Someone's like, oh, that section's hard because, oh, I just suck at Mario. It's like, okay, well, I would made it for people who don't suck at Mario. But if it's like, oh, that section's hard, and this person's like a god tier Mario player, and there's like, because there's no, like, I just need like a mushroom or something. Like, you know what I mean? That's where it changes, right? But I think the idea of saying it took forever is a bit rude there, Terry. But I'll leave that for another time, I guess. Because like I just went on a huge tirade where there is literally no difference between... Now I am going to address it. Because I just said where there is no time limit. Someone can't take forever because you can't take forever. There is literally no end. Like there's no... ROM hacks will continue coming out and will continue coming out forever. Even if they were made illegal, I feel like they'd still come out. So the notion that someone took forever when they basically went from like knowing nothing to learning everything is kind of just like a bit of a spit in the face. Alright. I am looking to have like a serious discussion here, so I'm just gonna time you out. But yes. The idea of when the crunch is too much is that's a hard one. Because when you're in the crunch, you don't realize you're in the crunch sometimes. And that can come from that, I guess going back to the, you know, the fire, that burning, right? That sensation that you have. And this idea that, do I allow myself to get consumed by that passion? And by how much? And again, these aren't things you can decide, so to speak, sometimes. Like, you can't be like, I'm only gonna get 80% influenced by my... Or like, you know, I'm only gonna spend most of my life on this hack. Like, that's not really something anyone ever really decides, right? It's sort of more of the byproduct of that passion, that fire, like that desire to make this. And I think when the crunch is too much, almost has an obvious answer, but that's when it's deteriorating from your regular life. You know what I mean? Like, you haven't slept in days or weeks. You're not eating properly. You're not going outside. You're skipping out on like social events or things that you're supposed to do. You know, things like that where it's less. You're not doing it out of the love. You're doing it almost out of this obsession. And I feel like that's when it gets dangerous, where it's like the burning the candle at both ends metaphor. But to explain it more literally, it's like too much of one thing is not good. You know what I mean? And I think there becomes a lot of that, where it's like eating too many sweets. And like, even if you love chocolate cake, if you eat it every day, like, you're gonna hate it, right? So I think remembering that it's like with like a relationship in some ways. Like sometimes I guess I don't want to get into relationship talks. I don't know if that's going to be appropriate here. But just that notion of sometimes you need space, right? Even with like a TV show, like it takes a break and you kind of get excited about the new season. So I was gonna say with a relationship, you take a break, but that could be a whole different complicated. That's not really what I'm talking about. ROM hacks are a gold mine for demand since people will always want Nintendo to make another Super Mario World, another Metroid, another Link to the Past. Whether they don't want to, and people like us will make the follow-ups or spiritual sequels. Exactly! And that's the beauty. Like, if you're working on a Super Metroid hack, and it's taking you, like, forever to do it, you know, comparatively to what you wanted to do. Like, you know, maybe I wanted it out in a year, and now it's taking me 5 years. The beauty is that people are still going to appreciate it. And I feel like it's one of those, like, even if one person understands your project, I still feel like it's worth it. As cheesy as that sounds. Like, even if everyone hates it, there's sort of like a poetic thing of all this where you'll kind of forever be a part of ROMHACK history. If you want to get, like, dramatic about all this. Like, if you're wondering, like, you know what I mean? Like, even the crappiest hack will be remembered, like, 50 years from now. Which is kind of, like, interesting to think about. Like, these hacks will be, like, someone's legacy. Or it could be your legacy. And I see why that's where the pressure comes from, too, right? Where it's like, I've attached my name to this, so... what, you know what I mean? Like, I want to make it the best I can be. Yeah. And if it's the best you can do for 2023, that's great. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. And I think people underestimate or underrate that feeling of like in general, you compare yourself to others, you're gonna feel like shit. And that's just life, right? And I think, again, that's why social media is so toxic, because of that nature. And everyone knows that, but we still do it. But ROM hacks are the exact same thing. And it sucks that it's kind of inherent, because you're gonna compare it to the OG game. But that's kind of, it's like I said, you're working on essentially a fan fiction of the game. So even in a fan fiction, you're gonna be like, oh, that's not what Darth Vader would say, or that's not what, you know, or whatever it is, right? So yeah, I find it interesting. I find everything about it. Well, I thought, oh, Flash, that's weird. Sometimes you just need a break for yourself, whether to wind down, calm down, or do something else. Yeah, and then that goes beyond just ROM hacks, and that's why I'm kind of just saying this stuff. Like, hopefully, even if, like I said, if one person is like, shit, yeah, I can't just take a break. That is cool. Yeah, maybe, like, taking a break will make your work stronger. Like, I promise you. And I don't mean, like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, even if you just fucked off for a month. I know people who've done that. They're like, I'm not gonna do this for like a year. And then when they came back, their passion, that fire, was so much stronger. And so much, like, just more about it. And I think, again, like, we get so obsessed on the grind, especially with, like, what's encouraged nowadays, right? Like, okay, you have to, like, you know, you got 7 jobs, you gotta, like, be the best, you know, you gotta win, get that W, you know? So I feel like just expressing yourself, people feel like that's not enough, or just contributing to the ROM hack pool, when that's not only something to be proud of, but something that's, like, great. Like, that's what keeps us alive. Like, even the crappiest hack, that's still, that might inspire someone else to make a great hack. That might inspire someone to make a great hack, to make a good hack. That might inspire someone to make an okay hack. It might inspire someone to make, you know what I mean? But it continues this train of, like, what ROM hacking's kind of about, and that was sharing levels that you made with your friends, right? From the earliest Doom mods to, like I said, this Miss Pac-Man and stuff. Basically, it was all these things were always made to be like, yo, Steve, check out, like, this cool level I made, or this cool thing I made. So I think not forgetting that spirit of ROM hacking will help a lot for those feeling stuck. Like, if you made some cool changes and you share that, and, like, that's all you could do was these cool changes, but people are like, yo, you got a custom, like, this system or whatever, ring, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Holy crap. Like, I've never seen that before. Like, think about how cool that is. Like, these are games people know like the back of their hand, and you're providing, like, even if it's just a 1 minute new experience, that's still something that, like, no one else can do. And I think like I said, even if it's just a small little contribution or a small little thing, you should feel proud about it. And I think that if you truly like put your heart and soul and like, you know, you do what you want to do, like on some level it will work out. It may not work out in the way you think it is or the way you wanted it to, but considering how hard this world of ROM hacking already is, even in this current day with level editors and stuff, you still have to learn a little bit of text editing and stuff sometimes, depending on what it is. There's still a lot. Like I said, you're learning what 20 people learned, but that's one person, or maybe 5 people, or however big your team is. Maybe you're literally going from 0 experience to like brand new. Maybe you've made 10 ROM hacks and now you're going to your 11th and you're like, why am I still doing this? And I think it's important to remember, sometimes it's good to remember why you even did it in the first place. But it's okay. If you're like, I don't want to make an 11th hack, don't make an 11th hack then. And that's okay too. And it will always be here. That's kind of what Bowie was saying. It's always going to be here for you. And I think even if the community changes, there'll always be new blood. And I've seen this firsthand. Even in the last like 5 years or whatever. Like, people come and go. But there's always going to be like those excited people. And sometimes that comes from the old guard. Sometimes that comes from like new people. Sometimes it comes from people who like were there now suddenly they've like, you know, got more invested or they have more time now. And basically that's usually what, you know, will keep the torch going. Like, you don't have to worry about I'm the only one doing this if that's what's getting you down. Because it might take another 10 years, but maybe someone else will. So like, if for the betterment of your health, if it means like I gotta just abandon this right now, it's too much, it's okay. Maybe someone else will figure it out one day, and maybe then you can work with them, and then you guys can collaborate together, and then maybe they solve that one thing you could never figure out. And like, instead of you having to spend 5 years in fucking pain and agony, you're actually able to push yourself into something else, like into a new thing. Yeah, this is what I'm Prodigy. We're talking about making ROM hacks and mental health, and how people get like really caught up on like the expectation and the pressure, and they're not like proud of what they made, and then they get themselves really down or they get really depressed. But they're not necessarily depressed because I feel like it's like they're depressed, like that's their feelings, but it's like they're making themselves depressed because of things that could actually be strengths. Like if someone's like, if all these people tell you your levels suck, you can use that to like make the level better or to make your next hack better. You're able to walk away from projects. Like you don't have to like, there's no contract, there's no expectation, there's no like if you want to spend 10 years on it or 10 months on it doesn't matter. Whether it's loved or hated, you're still contributing to the ROM hack like world, and that's very important. Would have been nice for Nintendo to look back and make sequels to Super Mario World Link to the Past, Super Metroid. The thing is, those old guards that made Mario World Link to the Past, Super Metroid, a lot of the main devs probably don't work for Nintendo anymore. They changed so much that they don't care about making these sequels anymore. Well, it's funny you bring that up with Nintendo specifically, because a lot of the times when you see those like new versions, that's the old guard wanting to make a new one. Like A Link Between Worlds, they were gonna make A Link to the Past again, and then they wanted to make a new one, and then same with Link's Awakening. That was supposed to be A Link to the Past port, and then they were like, let's make a new one. But in Nintendo's specific case, they want to make a sequel if they have a good idea. They don't just make sequels to make sequels. They make sequels because they're like, oh, we have this new like egg throwing mechanic that we want to play with. Like, how do we put that into a game? But yeah, at this point though, I'm down to take any chat questions. We've kind of talked about like creative struggles and ways we can try and solve that. We've talked about you know, like trying to look past the blank canvas, taking feedback and getting better about that, and like what that means and how you can apply that. When enough is enough. When is like crunch too much. Like how you're one person versus like a team of people who have degrees. Lack of confidence and being scared to not disappoint the others. Not so much the expectations, but the product. Is it fun? Is it not? How's a normal person going to evaluate your product if this bottomless pit or enemy gets hit? Just mentally painful, yeah. And we talked about a bit about that earlier, of what, like people who are paid like salaries and like professionals hired, they struggle with trying to figure out what is fun. You know what I mean? Like the fact that it's so hard as one person like makes sense. And it's almost like, I guess ROM hacking almost like attracts certain people, right? Like I feel like on some level, do you have to be like a little bit masochistic? But maybe not, because it's more like a knowledge test. So I feel like 9 times out of 10, the answer with ROM hacking is like, you just have to learn more about something, whether it's the code, the system, the RAM, whatever it is. And sometimes it's just not possible because of engine limitations or how it was programmed. And that's a whole different discussion, but how limitations can also feed your creativity. Sometimes you're sitting there like, man, all I have left is bullet bills for this level. Like that's the only, for Mario World you wouldn't have this issue, but let's say you did. The only enemy I haven't used left is bullet bills. So you're like trying to figure out ways to use them, and you might find some creative new way to use them because of that. So instead of it being like a, oh, I'm fucked or my hack's ruined or whatever, it could end up being a thing to help you. But yeah, the expectation, the pressure, especially with more established ROM hack creators, I don't necessarily have like an answer for that per se, but more just like strategies to help make it easier. Like I said, just like if you're stuck looking at the blank page, like just prototyping stuff and just trying like even dumb ideas or a new project or something for a minute just to change it up, like there's so much about this that is beyond just making a game. Like being creative in and of itself can sometimes require like a certain mood. Like I know some people who like only create when they're like intoxicated, right? Like if they're drunk or something. Like some people who only create when they're happy, or if it's like midnight, or like, you know, they've drank their tea and they're whatever. Like even for myself, like I haven't done tap dance streams because I haven't felt creative. Like I haven't felt like motivated to do it. And I feel like it's something you can't force, right? Like sometimes you have to take that break, as we talked about. And like I said, the only beauty of ROM hacks is that there's no expectation, right? There's no like, you have to get it out by Christmas or you lose your house or some shit like that. Like I said, sometimes that can be a lot of pressure too, right? We've talked about both sides of that. I'm kind of talking in circles now. But so even if they're bad ROM hacks, they're at least still trying. I'm sure they can improve. Well, that's the thing though, is that every person who made those really good ROM hacks, those people also made bad ROM hacks. They might not have released them or whatever. And then that's an important thing too, Boo, I didn't touch upon. But everyone sucks when they start. Everyone sucks. Every single person. Any person you think is good, they sucked. They 100% sucked when they started. They made every single mistake. They probably fucking deleted their shit. They probably made a wrong patch or uploaded a blank file or forgot the readme, or 100% they've made all those mistakes. Because usually you get good because you make the mistakes. And or saying the wrong thing or whatever, like, and you learn like how to get better, how to have better conversations, or how to be a, you know, a better collaborator, or a better person, or a better team player, or better at taking feedback, which I feel like feedback's such a big part of this, right? Another thing is that maybe sometimes the ROM hacker came from a background, a lot of privilege and resource. It would have been a great, yes! I call Super Mario World the gateway drug for a reason. It definitely has a lot of, and I fell victim to it myself, where everything's so easy there. You go to other games and you're like, ah! What do you mean I have to learn things? And that's the thing too. You might just be really good at one thing, and that skill is still invaluable. Maybe you're only good at refining the music. Like that was me with Mario RPG. I couldn't do like anything in that engine, but I was really good at figuring out how to make the music sound good. So I used that skill with Will, you know what I mean? And that was all I could contribute, but it helped make the ROM hack better. Even if it was that little like 2%, right? So that might just be your contribution, and that's totally fine. You might not be the gifted guy who can make like a 14 level hack, but maybe you can still make 14 really good normal levels. Maybe they're not like customized, blah blah blah. But maybe they're just solid normal levels, like just, you know, just good, just a solid platforming challenge or something. You know, just shoot some enemies, have some fun, whatever it is. The main message to normal games like Mario and Mega Man, with small exceptions, is I made it. It felt good. I beat that. It was fun. That's what usually ROMHACK stray away from. It's not bad, but they shouldn't expect a large following. With the exclusion of Kaizo, which actually becomes its own thing. Of course. And that was kind of what we were talking about too, where like being realistic with your expectations. If you're gonna make it for a certain audience, like understanding what that audience is and what they want. Because if you make it for a certain audience and they still hate it, I think that's important too, right? Like if you make, like I made this Kaizo hack, and then the Kaizo community's like, this sucks. It's like, I think instead of getting like, fuck you guys, which I haven't really seen this, but as an example here, oh, fuck you guys, it'd be more like, okay, what sucked about it? You know what I mean? Even when my hacks suck, I'm always like, what specifically sucked? Because like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's important, like, it's gonna suck, and I think that's, unfortunately, with anything, whether it's not even just ROM hacking, if you make art, if you ever make a movie, or fucking just do something at work, you're gonna get judged by all these factors of it, right? So learning on some level to know how to respond, or knowing how to like carry it with you. So I feel like a lot of people don't know how to like do that, so they end up taking it personal. It's like, okay, like there's the project and then there's you, and like if I think the project sucks, that doesn't mean you suck, right? Even if every single project you made sucks, you could still be like the most supportive, amazing person. Maybe you're like really good at collaborating or getting people together or whatever, right? Like that doesn't affect you as the person. And I think it's important to see why that is. And I think that helps alleviate some of this like pressure, so to speak. And like I said, if you want to try this style where you make something, release it, you get feedback, and then you keep changing it based on audience feedback. Like I said, there's ways to do that. And you can even make your own discords and stuff too if you want to get like super professional with it. But even beyond that, like I see that with ROM hacks all the time, and I think that's great too, where they like release it into the world, they kind of get a bunch of feedback, and then they don't make like drastic changes. They're just like, oh, okay, I'll fix that one boss, or I'll fix the one thing. And then they kind of just move on with their life, right? They don't obsess over it. But they're like, okay, like maybe I'll do this for like a couple months, or I'll do this for a little bit, right? But I'm not gonna allow myself to get consumed by that. But yeah, I think that's important too, Prodigy. Like, okay, I made this hack that's all spikes, and you can't move, and it's basically made for like my favorite streamer. Yeah, I only expect 3 people to like it, which is probably the streamer and their friends. Or like 10 people to like it. But that's the thing, if that was your goal, and they liked it or whatever, right? Then, or they pissed them off or whatever you're trying to do, then is that not like you like feel good about yourself? Like obviously you shouldn't try to make stuff just to piss people off, but you know what I mean? Like if I don't forget to like congratulate yourself. And that goes for like I said, the creative field. People forget to be like, oh, like I did that, like okay. And it doesn't mean like be an ego, like I did that, I'm the fucking best. Nothing like that. It's more just like no, I made this product, like I released this, it got good, bad feedback, whatever it was, and like this is like something I can make better, or I can make a new thing, or I can get inspired by this, as opposed to thinking it's like some kind of personal like attack on your person. About mental health, talking to many creators, the thing you found the most common among all of them was one thing in particular. It's an inner doubt. Should I dump X amount of hours into this mechanic, boss, pixel art, etc., when the criticism on something else can be harsh? Otherwise, none of them were afraid to go out of bounds. They all created amazing hacks with their pros and cons, and I love them for it. And I feel that comes down to like that's the people who've like done so much like mastery, right? They've spent so much time and effort and like prototyping and etc., right? Where like they can like trace it down to like the minute of how like they know the exact byte they're changing and where. So to them, it's not a matter of like skill level. It's more of a matter of like time and like you're saying, like people are going to care more about if the level design's fun than if like the music's dynamic or something like that, like some random thing that like might not matter. So they're very involved with the community. But yeah, but like, I still think but like it's not underrated because like being the one who, like I said this before to the Prodigy, but like being the one like to connect people together, be the through line. That's also very important for ROM hacking because, as we talked about, so much of it is built upon using other people's like notes and stuff like that. Then that shouldn't be like the whole goal. Obviously, you should be trying to learn it yourself too. But like, there's so much of like camaraderie, and like if someone's making like a new music engine or something, like knowing about that, it's so powerful for the community. Especially if it's not being shared, and like I said, there's all, and that wasn't trying to be specific there. That was more, I happen to be specific. But it's one of those things where it's like every person counts, and obviously someone who's like doing 100% of the work is going to be more valued than someone who's doing like 1% of the work. But I still don't think that means like they're useless or whatever. You know what I mean? And sometimes it just takes time. Like I said, these people who are good, this is like their 100th hack or whatever. Like they made crappy hacks that they probably didn't release, or like prototypes they never finished, or they did stuff that like you never knew about because they didn't share it. And so getting good is more of a matter of time, and that goes back to what we said, the passion thing. It's I'm kind of getting, I've been circular right now with what I'm saying. But yeah, the doubt in the creator is the biggest problem. The doubt in the creator, yeah. Like I said, I wish I had like a proper answer for that. But I think even just like acknowledging that might help the conversation. And like I said, people in the comments, people who are watching this after, like if you think of any kind of things like this, like feel free to let us know too, because that's kind of been the biggest conundrum, I guess you could say, is like there's 5, let's say, okay, like, for example, let's say there's 5 people making ROM hacks. If 4 of those people doubt themselves, we're now stuck with just 1 ROM hack creator. And usually that the 4 who are doubting themselves, sometimes it can be built on actual things that actually happen, like, you know, like essentially PTSD in a way, like traumatic experiences that happen, whether in the community or outside the community or creatively, and maybe something else they did. So they feel like they can't express themselves or whatever. It could be the pressure, like I said, like, man, blankety blank makes really good hacks. So like, I need to be just as good as blankety blank. And I feel like that's already self-defeating. And then there's the almost a sunk cost fallacy, where it's like they are near the end and they want to finish it, and that one's a tricky one. Like I said, I don't have a specific answer for that because it's such a, because there is an end, right? But it's one of those like, is the end worth it? And that almost gets down to like a spiritual level. Like I said, that goes back to the very first thing I said with that passion, like, and not essentially that the passion is more or less for someone, but it's almost like like this obsession or something that I don't know if it's healthy or not, that people get into. And that goes back to, like I said, about crunch, and yeah. I'm not going to keep repeating myself because the podcast is going to get long for no reason. For sure, I have folders full of projects that failed or just got abandoned. So I think that people, it's like Instagram and social, like I said with social media, not the comparison, but you usually see the best version of someone's self. So you're only looking at like the ROM hack creator's like best thing. You know, their 1.0. You're not seeing the 0.1s. Well, some creators, like I said, some creators do release that stuff. But for example, let's say like the best creator ever. They're probably doing all sorts of stuff that you're not realizing. They probably have a website or a blog or something where they're posting it, or Twitter. There might be all sorts of ways that they're trying to improve themselves or fight these battles or find answers that you might not be realizing that you could do, or that people do. You know what I mean? Like the amount of people I see who go to Discords like asking for advice, like, and not in the sense of like level design, but just sort of like motivational advice, like why should I keep making this? And I think it's good just to have that reminder of like, yo, we love your shit and all that. But like I said, this isn't like a, unfortunately, I don't have like a, and that's the answer. But I think it's something that's worth talking about, like we're doing. Like I said, there might be better things than what I know, right? Release content is everything that went through the dev's quality assurance. Exactly. And if we've seen enough credits, think about how many playtesters you see, all these things. Like usually it's like a wall of like people, right? Especially the really good hacks. It's like pages of stuff, right? Rest is behind the scenes. You're that, there's that. There's also feedback, and being surrounded by people that have those passion is very, very important. Yeah, people that care about the project ignore their own preferences. Any team suffer from everything being pushed to the agenda to the developer. True. When working, you should always be the personal opinion, take it as such, and make changes according to your belief, not only feedback. Yes. Yeah, it's funny you missed sort of that part, Prodigy, but yeah, I talked about that where essentially like when you take feedback, not like knee-jerking to like the first reaction, but treating it more like the group opinion in a way. Different again if you're working with collaboration. Collaboration's a bit different. But let's say like you release it or whatever. It's like they get worried about, okay, oh man, that one guy hated that jump. Do I change it? It's like, no, I would worry if like 50 people hated that jump, or let's assume it's really popular. Oh, I saw 50 different YouTube videos and every single one said, fuck that second level because of that charging chuck jump. Like, oh, okay, now we have somewhere to like okay, that is actually like laser focus, like that's probably something to fix, right? But again, it goes back to what is your merit as a developer? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Because if you're trying to make a Kaizo hack, then that charging chuck thing is probably perfect. But if you're trying to make like a easy hack, like, you know, I'm trying to make it like Mario World. Okay, that right there is like, that's a bullseye. That's very much like a, I feel like a more direct feedback, like a loop that's a bit more trustworthy. Basically, my point is, you'll stress yourself out if you keep like, one person said something and you're like, oh, change it. I feel like that gets way too much like out of control in a way. Again, assuming it's not like, I'm like, if I went to like, you know, someone who's like good at games or something. Like if I went to like, you know what I mean? Like Joe Schmo and he's like a world record runner. Like I would take his opinion different from like Bob 25 leaving a review. But if like 30 Bobs left a review and they all said the same thing, I'd be like, that's a bot account. No, I'd probably be like, okay, that's probably a bit more like, that's tangible feedback in my opinion. You know what I mean? People who didn't like that jump, maybe you should change it. But imagine that was the point. That was you cheated and you shouldn't change it. Exactly. You got to find your beliefs as a developer. Because if you know what you're trying to do, all that other stuff won't happen as much or as badly. I won't lie and say it won't happen, because I feel like there's always going to be like that, you know, it's like life, right? It's like you're always going to get nervous, right? But you get better at handling being nervous. Like you find ways to get better at being nervous around people or whatever your thing is. So it's the same thing with ROM hacks, right? Where it's like, if you were trying to make a Kaizo hack and everyone hates your Kaizo jump because it's too much of a Kaizo jump, I wouldn't change it, right? But if it's like, oh, it just feels cheap, it doesn't feel Kaizo, this feels like a really like, just way too tight and like, it's not even fair, it's RNG or like the timing's off, then that's like, oh, okay, that is more important for a Kaizo thing where it's about a one shot and a... Exactly, right? I think me and Prodigy are saying the same thing right now. Oh, Coochie Killer, what's going on? We were talking about, it's kind of at the end of the podcast here, but we're talking about like mental health and taking care of yourself when it comes to ROM hacking. Not just you specifically, but just everyone. And we've kind of covered all the topics at this point. But what about music and hacks? Are there sometimes people who make a song just for a hack? Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, that's pretty much how I contributed to Will's hack. I didn't even make the music. I just like tinkered with it a little bit. But it helped him out a lot. But yes, it's great. Yeah, and like I said, I don't necessarily have answers about this stuff, so to speak. In your country, it's a topic that's usually ignored. That's messed up, dude. That's about Mark Max. But yeah, so I'm kind of interviewing chat today. Kind of a different style. So we've been talking about how to get over creative struggles. Like things you could do to get over the blank canvas, or to like get more ideas on the page, or like how to create ideas. And essentially that's just allowing yourself to do it. I know it sounds dumb, but like get like a word pad and literally just write down like cat, bat, like all these kind of things, or mechanics in the game, sliding, jumping, shooting, and then maybe like try to combine them together. Maybe try to like, and that goes back to how many levels, how many things, what am I trying to do? And you'll slowly kind of create this shape of everything, this kind of like structure. We talked a lot about like some of that Nintendo design philosophy, where if you're really stuck, you could focus on like one mechanic, and then that mechanic will kind of get evolved throughout the stage. And if you do that for every stage, you basically have a game. We talked about like the pressures of being a creator, and how like we feel like there's all this like I have to rush it out, when really like that's all kind of like in our heads. And like ROM hacks will always be appreciated, whether they take 1 month or 5 years. When's time to walk away from it? When is like the crunch too much? Like when are you sacrificing too much? So yeah, we've gone through a lot of stuff today. It's been a really heavy topic. You're looking, oh, okay, you're looking about 20 minutes or so. I know I haven't been here in quite a few days. I'm not gonna talk. Yeah. I heard you say something about like abandoned projects, and I wanted to kind of say a little about, yeah. I think that's the thing people don't talk about. And I'm sure you heard me say that. People get so caught up on like, oh man, they just released banger after banger, man, like year after year. Bro, they probably spent like, there's probably like 50 abandoned files somewhere to get to that point that you don't even realize. Or like levels they deleted or started over, or whatever it was. And also a topic that often gets swept under the rug because of the stigma that you're not stable. The thing is though, a lot of people don't feel stable, but they pretend to look stable. I think that that's the thing with the being stable, is that people think it's like an on or an off switch. You can definitely like be stable, but still have like this like 10% of you that's like unsure about something. You know what I mean? Like I could go to work and wear my suit and talk to my boss and make jokes, but that doesn't mean I'm not gonna like maybe be upset about a house I couldn't buy or something. I'm trying to be vague here. I don't have to buy a house, but you know what I mean? So it's like, I think that's important to remember. Because people are thinking like, oh, you're depressed, you have to be a certain way. Oh, you're upset, you have to be a certain way. Like, no, you can be like you can be like super happy, but like broken inside, right? And vice versa, right? If the person who looks like they're sad, they're actually like the happiest person, right? You've seen those memes, right? But no, for sure, I get why mental health isn't talked about, because that. I figured that's why it's important. Like I said, I don't have like answers. I'm not a counselor or anything. But even just bringing this up, like the stuff we've been talking about with chat, with Prodigy and Bowie and everything, just these notions of like creators not feeling like they're good enough, and like what is the answer to that, and how do we not solve it? Like I don't think we're gonna solve it today, but how do we just explore it further? Like what are things that like help that? When Pierce Salve started doing the review Mega Man ROM hacks project on Twitch, yes, yeah, that's so cool. You saw that Mega Man 3 hack with 1 level, and you're surprised to find out it was your own hack. I like how you were surprised. You were like, wait, I made this. So you searched through your USB hard drive and stuff and found your huge folder of IPS patches, which you were able to send them the last update you ever had. No way. And then to everyone else like Kumba Tom, no way. I want to check it out too, Kuja. That'd be fun. For new Hack Friday. But that's the thing, right? This is a project you thought was gone from like, not gone, but like, you know, was forgotten. But here you are like 10, however, 20 years later, and people are still like wanting to play it. And that's what I mean about the beauty of ROM hacking and how it never dies. And how like even with like some of the meme hacks and how like they weren't appreciated in their time and now they're getting more attention. And like it's interesting how this kind of works sometimes. And that happens again with all artistic fields, right? How many musicians have died? And then like 20 years later, they're like, yo, I love Kate Bush. Bro, she's my favorite. Didn't die, but that's a perfect example. But yeah, ROM hacking is definitely here to stay. And I think on some level, I wonder if these companies know it helps them, right? Like anytime you play a Mario World hack, you're advertising Nintendo and Mario, and people want to play Mario World. They'll probably go buy a Switch in Mario World. You know what I mean? Like, I think people discount that part of it, like the like subtle advertisement part. Wonder if there'll be a Bubsy ROM hack that is way better than the original game or way worse than the original game. My man wants that Bubsy. There is a chance, because there is those Steam Bubsy games, that there might be like a Steam workshop for the game. Because there's 2 Bubsies that they released like a couple years ago that I refuse to play. They look terrible. And like I said, it's okay to take a break. I just want to remind people of that. Like, it's okay to like just come back later. You know, one thing that helps a lot, but that comes from the person, is to set self boundaries. Yes, ROMHackers always have this. It's not ready. It can be better. Yes, it can be, but there's always a line you shouldn't cross. Yep. Like I said, even Miyamoto thought Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time were unfinished. He wanted to do more with them. He felt like he didn't complete his whole vision. You're surprised everyone liked it because you never had to release it public before. It's interesting how they were able to get a hold of it. What if there'll be a bar to that? I already read that. I think the idea that, like I said, that the ROM hack has to be perfect or better or more polished than the original can sometimes be a bit of a sunk cost fallacy. But obviously, again, like, there's obviously a quality standard, and I can understand even just trying to reach that, like, bare minimum standard of, like, you know, just not glitchy tiles, or, like, not, you know, it doesn't look like it's slapped together in 2 seconds. That can be really hard, too, depending on the game. I guess to answer your question earlier in chat, like, why don't we see more hacks that are just, like, you know, Mario World, but more levels, or a sequel to Super Metroid and stuff? It's hard. Like, these were games designed by, like, people who are considered, like, the best of the best, right? Like, people that are, like, books are written about these people. So to even, like, channel, like, 10% of their, like, thought process is pretty impressive, in my opinion. Like, people who, like I said, have spent, like, essentially their entire lives to make this game. You know, stuff like Mario World, where Miyamoto, like, think about all the Marios he's made before that. Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, all those, like, Donkey Kong 3 and Junior and all that shit. Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers Lost Levels, Super Mario Brothers... Like, he made, like, 8 games before Mario World. Not including Doki Doki Panic. And some other shit we probably don't remember. Like, once you get to your 10th ROM hack, then you can start being more, like... You know what I mean? I don't know. But also, it's also hard to learn that. Like, you kind of have to learn what quality is for yourself and what your standard is and what... Like I said, it goes back to what we said. What kind of hack do you want to make? What is your expectation? Is it 5 levels? Like, okay, I could probably make 5 levels in 5 months, you know, a month a level. Okay. But okay, I don't want to spend 5 months though. Okay, let's do 3 levels. And then maybe when you're doing that 3 months of working, you end up making 10 levels, right? Who knows? That's the thing is, if you just don't start sometimes, you're never gonna start. And sometimes it just is a matter of, like, putting the pen to the page, writing words out, like, even just goofy words, just writing stuff out. Sometimes you just have to keep writing, and then stuff flows. Like, oh, I can't believe I can't write right now. Oh my god, I can't write. And then, you know, what if a shoe became a boss, and I fought Shoe Boss, and then suddenly I could ride the shoe, and now we have a shoe level. You know, like, you might create something, and then in the middle of that, you're like, ooh, riding a shoe. Ooh, riding a shoe might be a good idea. The way you made a hack, for a blunt example, let's make a hack for a week. That's the thing I'd like to see more of. Or for 10 days, rest more. People should rest and not burn out. See, that was the interesting thing with my make a hack in a week. So I wanted to try and encourage a new, like, I don't want to make it like the new standard. I don't think that was ever going to happen. But just kind of like I was really inspired by that Family Tracker thing. Although I would have just waited for Mega Man 5. I didn't realize it was going to come from Mega Man 5, which kind of made me laugh. I would have just waited for Mega Man 5. Because I'm way better at Mega Man 5 hacking. Like, I have a lot more, I can do a lot more with it. I had to, like, learn Mega Man 2 hacking. So a lot of that week was like, how does Mega Man 2 even work? It's a little bit different. And then, but I think, but yeah, no, I knew releasing it was probably going to get hated. I knew specifically the Heatman level would get the most heat. But yeah, I know the Zelda community did that recently. And the Zombies Ate My Neighbors, where they kind of did, like, make, like, a hack in a month kind of thing, or 2 weeks. And I think that's as simple as just, like, it's almost like doing a game dev or you know, like a game jam. Like, hey guys, for the month of September, let's try and let's everyone make one level and then we'll just smash it together. You know what I mean? And then like you see that in the Mario World community with the contests and that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's as simple as that, right? Like, and that goes down to people like myself. Like maybe I should say this more, like or encourage this more. And is it hard to find a fellow game developer ROM hacker to collaborate with? I'm not going to mention my friend's name, but you had a hard falling out with another friend. They're game devs. I guess it kind of goes with everything we're talking about. Some people are down for it. Some people aren't down for it. And you have to kind of respect it either way. You know what I mean? Everyone has their own life or their own, you know what I mean? Whatever's going on. But I think it's important to like collaborate when you can, honestly. But there's no expectation that you have to, if that makes sense. Even though my own personal belief, I think everyone should collaborate always and share everything. But I understand why that wouldn't be the case. But that comes the interesting part too, which I get is almost like a different topic, not different, but expands the topic. It's like, because yeah, you want to work with someone, but what if the pressure of the hack ruins the friendship, right? And that does happen. Like as Bowie literally saying an example right now, or you know, a group tries to get together and then one person does something and the rest, whatever. Who knows, right? Yeah, I think it would be interesting to just see more. But I will say I got really discouraged from doing the week-long hack. I'd probably give myself more time, honestly, or have more of a buffer of cleaning. Like maybe the hack's made in a week, but then like I have like a month to clean it or something. Cause my issue I found with like trying to not rush a hack, but you know, just that challenge.
Yours truly, Princess.
Because for me, it was like it was more of like a challenge thing. Like, can you make a hack in a week, and can it be like? I mean, I made it into the Mega Man 2 rando, so I'll take that as a win. I'll take that as it wasn't total garbage. And I already know the biggest issues. Like I already know the stages that suck. The whole idea was that it was supposed to just be Mega Man 2, but kind of like an alternative Mega Man 2, like a nightmare Mega Man 2, like he's dreaming and he's having a bit of like a corruption. So when people were saying the things they were saying, I was like, kind of what I was going for. So like, but it's that thing we said. Is that going to be fun though? Are people going to like that? Yeah. Is that actually going to be something people want to play? And I think that's something I should have put more weight into. I was so focused on like the concept of it, like this corruption thing of like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, it's like shit gets more weird and all that. That the game suffered because of it, you know what I mean? But again, that's more just because I tried to do it that in and of itself is the challenge, right? Like much like any of these things, like trying to do something in a week is always going to be hard, regardless if it's a new hack or a video game or a novel or whatever it is, right? Like that's kind of part of the challenge. But I definitely want my next hacks. I mean, you've already seen, like I'm taking my time with my next few hacks. I'm not trying to rush them, but I'm also not trying to like take forever either. I don't know. I was just saying that that night in Take Mega's chat, how personally for me, Jay Riva is my #1 favorite Mega Man ROM hacker. Ooh. Probably 10 or 15 hacks. His first one being Mega Man 5 Hyperion. Oh, I remember Hyperion. Yes. Gotten better over time. Happened many times. There's so many examples. I know. Here there's huge drama with Mario Galaxy ROM hack community. See this on Twitter? Oh no. Clouds are hard because once in a full moon at the stars line, you can find a person that likes you enough, and there's no guarantees also. Yeah. That's kind of the best way to put it, Prodigy. I will say that's the beauty of the community, or like being able to find like I think that it's the beauty of like the discords and stuff that I actually like a lot, is that it's a lot easier to find people if you are trying to find people now. Like even 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever, like it wasn't as like ubiquitous. There probably was a different stomping ground. I'm sure there was probably a different site or a different place people went to. But it is nice to know there's kind of like a consistent way you can kind of reach out for help. And whether or not you'll get the help, you're not guaranteed any help by anyone, you know what I mean? As long as you remember that, it gets less heartbreaking. Or when you try to Google for help, and then the advice is like, if you can't even figure this out, you might as well quit ROM hacking right now. Which is not directed at anyone in chat. That was actually something Mario World, I saw that. And I was like, what the fuck? Hey, how do I do this thing? Well, if you can't figure it out, good luck, buddy. Well, no, I'm trying to figure it out. Like, that's... Isn't this part of the issue that we don't have the knowledge, so we need the knowledge? But yeah, and the thing too is like collaboration sometimes happen if like sometimes just through natural occurrence. Like I wanted to work with Will because I heard his hack and I saw the potential, and I was like, I feel like I could do a better job with the music. And that's not, that wasn't any shade. He already knows. Like I was like, that's how I got a lot of my jobs in life. I was just like, I'm pretty sure I can do a better job. And then like he was already, the thing with him is like we already kind of knew each other right through stream, but it's not always that weird, but it is sometimes. It's not as common as you think. But collaboration, that's why I like communities that encourage like and like most communities already do this, by the way, where it's like they release their tools, their patches, and you know, you find them on romhacking.net, or like you always have a way to like get the things like, oh, you want the infinite HP or the improvement or the like, it's easy to find, like you don't have to like dig for it. So a lot of, like I said, that is already a collaboration, which I feel like people forget sometimes. Like if I release a patch that makes it easier for you to edit the menu, that's me collaborating with you, right? Because now you've used my thing. Although that doesn't mean like I own your, that's nothing like that. It's more just like it's so inherently collaborative that I think that we're going into a different subject now. That's a whole different. Why don't people collaborate more? I can do a better job. People should always say that to themselves. Otherwise, you'd expect something is good enough for perfect, which is never true. But I know it's kind of been a thing in my life, and a lot of it's been because I've been able to prove myself, and that's why I've liked the challenge with ROM hacking and game development. So I don't have it like down. You know what I mean? Like I don't have a. I'm still learning so much about it and like how it goes and just how it works. You know what I mean? That but I know that's not for everyone. That goes back to what we talked about like an hour ago, where like for me, like that drives me, like that like continuous puzzle of like, oh shit, I have to like figure this out. Like that to me is exciting. Like that stimulates my brain. And but not enough where like I want to spend 24/7 doing it. So I feel lucky in that regard. But that's more of, I think, of an ADHD thing, which is a whole different discussion if we get into like mental health stuff. But like for me, like I'm able to jump around different stuff because like inherently that's how my brain works. So I'm able to like leave a project for a month because I'm already like, I'm gonna go do this now. Like that's already kind of how I'm working. And then with the sentence, some people go full circle and can't stop perfecting it. And then that's what I was getting at, where like you kind of have to like either cut your losses, like okay, like I'm gonna release 2.0 or whatever the version is, and like I'll start like a new project now that I'm like a better creator, because you might just get so stuck at untying your old like programming knots, so to speak. Like you were so bad at doing it that you're like, oh, I have to like redo everything. Like it literally might just be faster to like go, you know what I mean, like just do it, like allow that flexibility. And then like Memlock said, sometimes it's better to just like finish what you set out to do there, but like to a, or like Prodigy said as well, like to a certain line, like a certain like, okay, I know if I get good levels, good boss fights, good music, and some maybe a unique weapon or two, like I'm happy with that. And like, oh, custom graphics, oh maybe like maybe you'll add a few custom graphics, maybe, you know, maybe you'll, and it's not always definitive, like it's hard to like get it. But most times you kind of go double like what your expectation, but at least I found for myself, like it's easy to like get caught up. And we talked about that last week, where pretty much everything in programming takes twice as long as you think it does. In my case, like I said, with my Steam game, I thought it would take me about 3 to 6 months, and it took me about a year, a bit over a year. Like, and that was again like having to learn how to do the programming and how Steam works, and a lot of it wasn't even like the game development, but like things around game development. And don't forget, with every project, you're getting better, you're getting faster, you're getting more knowledgeable. And maybe you had to abandon that huge project now, but maybe in 5 years, 10 years, the tools will get better. Someone will have a reverse, what do you call it? The reverse engineered, you know, all the code's all done. Like Pokemon has that now. But like every single thing is just like available now. But if you tried that a couple years ago, it'd be really hard. So sometimes waiting is better. Like even now with Mega Man, we're actually in like a plethora of Mega Man tools. If you tried to hack Mega Man 8 or any PlayStation Mega Man game like last year, you wouldn't have been able to. But by this year, we have not just one, but 2 hacks of it, or 2 things of it now, and hacks coming and stuff. So that's sort of the beautiful sunrise at the end of our discussion here, is that you may feel discouraged now. It may feel like, oh my god, I'm trying to do this thing and it's impossible. But maybe someone will solve it one day. Maybe someone will make a music thing, or make a physics thing, or make a ASM or whatever that actually solves your problem. And that saves you a month or 5 months or a year. Or, you know what I mean? And that's always been my favorite part of ROM hacking. This sort of like surprise, where someone's like, hey, I've actually been working on a Yoshi's Island level editor, whatever it is, for like 5 years now. And you're like, what? Like, I had no idea, right? So there's always this sort of, like I said, sunny horizon here, where just because you're giving up now, or if you have to give up, or for whatever reason, you might have to take a step back or a break, things might be easier when you come back. Like 9 times out of 10, it usually is. Or you might have asked someone, and then when you took that week off, they actually got back to you in that week. And then you find out about something like, oh, I never knew about the VRAM or whatever it was. So, like I said, breaks are important. Don't discount your own mental health and allowing yourself to take a step back. So, even if it means for a long time too. And there's no time limit. It doesn't matter if you take forever. So what? Like, you can get cocky. Where's your ROM hack? Where's your thing? When you get graphics from Mega Man Omega or Thanatos, I always make them like take like an hour or something to make sprites or graphics. I might can take like days because there's so many steps, right? Yeah, exactly. It's a beautiful. That's the kind of stuff that I love seeing, where someone's like, man, all I can make is graphics. It's like, it might take me like 10 days to make a graphic. Like you can make it in 10 minutes. Like, holy crap, that's so useful. That's such an important skill. And that's pretty much how I've had my music editing career, was because of that. Where I'm like, I can edit your music in like an hour. And they're like, no way. I'm like, do it. Let's do it. And like, that's how you build the community, right? That's that collaboration community stuff we're talking about. That's the stuff that makes, that's what makes Mega Man 3 Improvement so good, right? Like all these different people came together, and like sort of like, and just years of attention. If they did all the animation data, frames, animation speed, objects, and they just do it all in like an hour. Like it's so fascinating just how everyone's brain works and how everyone's just able to like understand things so differently. But chat, do we have any final remarks, any final comments? I actually thought today was going to be a short episode, but this might be one of my longest episodes ever of ROMHACK Podcast. But I want to say thank you, chat. You actually gave some like fantastic questions, fantastic answers. Like I said, we weren't necessarily able to solve the issue, which was never really the goal. But my goal was more just to normalize this conversation and for us to like talk about it or discuss it with your friends or other creators or people you know, or people who end up watching this on YouTube or wherever. Just that idea of what does it mean to create something? Why am I creating this? When is enough? And am I crunching too much? Like, am I sacrificing too much for something that's not worth it? And I don't mean worth it like where it's, oh, it's crap. I mean worth it in the sense of like, it's going to like your friend's birthday more important. I'm sure that is, right? I'm sure like not sacrificing things that are beyond that, right? It's been an enlightening experience. More to bring this light and see if it spreads out and does find an answer. Yeah. It's yeah, I've pretty much just rambled for 2 hours, but I want to say, chat, you've been fantastic. I really appreciate you guys encouraging this discussion. Yeah. Your final remarks, if someone watches this, is people don't finish your hack with your obligation to do so. Do it with the love you had for it, and someday, sometime, if you share it, it will be your masterpiece. I couldn't have said it better myself. Some of the greatest artists have been loved beyond their time. And just because you make something and it's not seen now, who knows? You're forever a part of the history of ROM hacking now. And it might take 10 years, 20 years, but who knows? maybe it'll come back around. But yes, I've been Cousin Catnip. I want to say thank you everyone for joining me. And this has been another episode of
It's the ROMHACK podcast.